You ever see something so out of place, it feels like a dream? Like a daisy growing through concrete, or a child at a window that doesn't exist. That's how it started. For me, it was a Tuesday. Sky too bright, mailbox still damp from the night's rain. I was running late, and the straps on my mailbag were digging into my shoulder. But none of that mattered the moment I saw her again. Same house, same porch, same girl. She was sitting just behind the screen door, knees to chest, eyes rimmed red like she hadn't slept in days. Tears trailing down her cheeks in slow, glistening streams. But this time, she looked right at me, held my gaze. Not a look of begging, not even fear. It was worse. It was resignation. I'm James Calloway. Most folks in Marlowe just call me Jimmy the Mailman. Been working the same route 17 years. I know which dogs bite, who lets their roses die, and which neighbors sneak bourbon into their morning coffee. It's the kind of job where little details matter. The kind where you learn to notice the shifts. So when the Henderson house, big, white, Victorian, all gables and shadow, suddenly had a new family move in after sitting empty for years, I clocked it. Couple with a little girl. Not much furniture at first. Black SUV in the driveway. Thick curtains over every window like the house had something to hide. But what stayed with me most was the sound. That house didn't breathe. It didn't creak. It watched. The first time I saw the girl, it was raining. A slow, silver drizzle. She was perched at the door again, tucked into the corner like a forgotten doll. Her clothes were too thin for the cold. Yellow dress, bare feet. Her hair stuck to her forehead, and her shoulders trembled with each sob. I paused, just a second, long enough to wonder if I should say something. That's when a hand pulled her back. Not harsh, not fast, just deliberate. The door shut, and I kept walking. Now I need you to understand something. I'm not proud of that. I've walked past crying kids before. We all have. You don't want to intrude, right? You tell yourself it's a family matter, that maybe it's a tantrum, that someone else will step in. But this wasn't normal. It didn't feel like a tantrum. It felt like a secret someone didn't want found. By the fifth time I saw her, same place, same tears, I started asking quiet questions. At the diner, I leaned over to Marlene, who's been hosting tables since Nixon. Anyone know the new folks at the Henderson place? She raised a brow. Recluses. Keep to themselves. Man's some kind of contractor. The wife. I ain't seen her. Then she added, you mean the little girl? Always looks so sad. My stomach dropped. Marlene noticed too. I started paying closer attention, timing my route, so I'd hit their mailbox right at 10:12 a.m., the exact moment she'd appear each day. It was like clockwork. She never came outside, never waved, just stared. And then, one morning, she wasn't there. You'd think that would bring relief. It didn't. Because absence, when you're expecting presence, doesn't soothe. It unsettles. That entire day, something itched under my skin, like static in my blood. And I couldn't shake the image. Those eyes staring through a mesh screen, asking silently for something she couldn't name. Then came the envelope. Plain, unmarked, stuffed deep into their mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Just one word scrawled on the back in shaky pencil. Help. I stood there for a long time. Mailbag forgotten. The breeze nudged at my collar. I could smell grass, freshly cut somewhere nearby, but it couldn't cut through the metallic taste in my mouth. I looked up at the house. Curtains still drawn. Door shut tight. No sign of movement. I slid the envelope into my coat pocket. And that night, I didn't sleep. What do you do when you suspect something's wrong, but have no proof? You think about calling someone, Child Protective Services, the sheriff. But then you think about being wrong, about ruining lives. You think about how people might look at you. But the next morning, when I passed by again, the girl was back. And this time, her lip was split, swollen. That was it. I made the call. Sheriff Bell wasn't exactly enthusiastic. You got a gut feeling and a crying kid. That's not a crime, Jimmy. I told him about the envelope. He sighed. You have it. I reached into my coat pocket. Empty. I searched every pocket. My mailbag. My glove compartment. Nothing. The envelope was gone. You been working long hours? Bell asked. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Just check the house. Please. He promised he'd swing by. Said it casual, like picking up milk. But he never did. Days passed. Then weeks. The girl appeared less and less. Until one day, she didn't appear at all. Winter came early that year. Heavy frost in the mornings, crows gathering like sentinels on power lines. I'd still glance toward the house every time I passed. Hope gnawed away at me like moths on cloth. Then, January 9th, a Tuesday, mailbox at 327 East Cormorant Street had its flap open. Wind tugged at the mail like it wanted to steal secrets. And there, nestled between a gas bill and junk ad, was another envelope. Same shaky handwriting. But this time it didn't say help. It said, "She's in the walls." I reported it immediately. And this time, Belle listened. Within the hour, 2 cruisers parked outside the Henderson home. No one answered the door. They forced entry. The house was dark, musty, smelled of mildew and stale air. No child in sight. No signs of a family. Just furniture covered in sheets and a single photograph on the mantel. A man, a woman, and the girl. Smiling. But the smiles didn't touch their eyes. The FBI got involved after forensics found something buried behind the basement drywall. It wasn't a body. Not yet. It was a diary. Child's handwriting. Drawings of a small room. No windows. Descriptions of footsteps overhead. Of darkness. Of someone named Mr. Red. The next morning, the house was sealed off. Yellow tape. Agents and windbreakers. Cameras. And me. Just a mailman with too many questions and a shaking hand. They found the room on day 3. Hidden behind a false panel in the second-floor linen closet. Soundproofed. Reinforced. Inside, a mattress, a bucket, a single battery-powered light, and carved into the wood, hundreds of tallies. Scratch marks. One for each day, it seemed. No child inside. Just the smell of fear. That was 3 weeks ago. They still haven't found her. But yesterday changed everything. Because as I walked past the old Henderson place, something new caught my eye. The mailbox flag was up, and inside was one last envelope. No handwriting this time. Just a Polaroid. A girl. Tears streaking her face. Mouth open in a silent scream. Behind her, a wall. Familiar wallpaper. Peeling. And one phrase scratched in the corner, barely legible under blood and dust. I never left. They say memory is like a house. Rooms you visit often become cozy, familiar. But there are doors you never touch. Because some rooms were never meant to be opened. The Henderson house was one of those. The morning after I found the Polaroid, I drove straight to Agent Kessler's temporary field unit. She was standing near the incident map, phone to her ear, the lines in her forehead tighter than yesterday. I didn't bother waiting for her to finish the call. "I found this," I said, and slid the photo across the table like it might burn. She hung up, picked up the Polaroid with gloved fingers. The silence dragged. "Where?" she finally asked. "In the mailbox." My throat felt raw. Same as the last one. Flag was up. She leaned in, eyes narrowing. "This wallpaper. Where have I seen this before?" "It's not in the house anymore," I said. "Not since the Reno. But it was there. Years ago." She motioned to the tech team. "Run facial enhancement. I want timestamp estimates, dust particle analysis. Everything." Then she turned back to me. "James, do you know how long this child's been missing?" I hesitated. "Months." She shook her head. "Years." Backstory has a way of hitting like thunder, loud, wide, but delayed. You feel the pressure before you hear the sound. And when it hits, you realize the story you thought you were in was only half the truth. 10 years earlier, March 17th, 2015, the Henderson house was owned by an older couple then. The Larkins. Retired teachers. Nice folks. They rented out the basement to a man named Raymond Ellis. Claimed he was an electrician. Quiet. Paid in cash. Folks called him Red. Because of his hair. And the rust-colored van he drove. He kept to himself. But every once in a while, there'd be flickers. Things you remember in hindsight. A locked shed. Power tools running at night. A child's laughter. Quick, fleeting, like wind through a crack. Back then, nobody said anything. Back then, you minded your own. Present day, Agent Kessler gathered the task force. "We need to revisit every inch of that property," she said. "Every board. Every beam. The original blueprints showed crawl spaces that don't exist anymore. I want infrared. I want sonar. And someone find out what happened to Raymond Ellis." That name hit me like a falling beam. Red. He wasn't just some recluse from a decade ago. I'd seen him, not long before the new family moved in. He'd been standing by the edge of the woods behind the Henderson house, holding a tool bag, watching. I thought he was a contractor. Now I wasn't so sure. "Agent Kessler. James, did you ever see the girl outside? Like, actually outside the house?" I shook my head. She was always inside, behind the screen. She never came out. And the woman? She asked. The mother? That's the thing. I don't think I ever saw her at all. Sometimes, your brain works backward, like peeling wallpaper to see what was painted underneath. And now, the image that surfaced in my mind was the girl's dress. Not just thin, old-fashioned, like something out of a different time. 3 days into the renewed search, they found something buried in the garden. It wasn't a body. Not yet. It was a doll. Porcelain. Cracked. One eye missing. But beneath it, they found teeth. Small. Human. Too many to belong to just one child. The media descended like birds to a carcass. Basement of secrets. Marlowe's monster. The crying girl case. But it was all noise. Because while they pointed cameras, we still had no name. No confirmation. Just that Polaroid. Just a ghost in a house that kept giving up secrets one beam at a time. The next twist came from the forensic linguist. They'd analyzed the diary found in the basement. The entries weren't just written over time, he explained. They were coached. There's a rhythm, almost like dictation. Like someone was making her write certain things. Agent Kessler's face paled. Control through language, she said. That's how he kept her compliant. Then came the drawing. One page in the diary. Crude, but haunting. A man, stick figure tall, with long red lines for hair, and dozens of keys dangling from his belt. He was standing outside a tiny square. A box. Inside it, a crying girl. Below, written in shaky hand. Mr. Red has the keys. He locks the days away. That night, I couldn't sleep. My house felt too still, too watched. I pulled the Polaroid from my desk, looked at the corner, at that scratchy phrase. I never left. And suddenly, it hit me. The wallpaper in the background, floral, peeling, it wasn't from the main house. It was from the Larkins guest house. The one that burned down years ago. Flashback. September 2018. I remember the fire. Late autumn. Orange sky. Sirens in the distance. The fire marshal ruled it electrical. No injuries. The guest house was declared a loss. Insurance paid out. But what if? What if it wasn't empty? I rushed to Kessler the next morning. You need to dig under the foundation of the guest house. She stared at me. Why? I showed her the back of the photo. In the corner, not just writing. A small watermark. L. Contractor Supply, 2015. She frowned. The guest house was demolished in 2018. Exactly, I whispered. But the photo was taken before the fire. The next 24 hours blurred. The FBI brought in cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, heavy machinery, and at 3:42 p.m., the excavator struck metal. A trapdoor, rusty, locked from the outside, buried beneath 5 inches of concrete. They pried it open. What we saw next changed everything. A room, sealed shut, bunk bed, 2 blankets, a chain bolted to the wall, children's drawings taped everywhere, some hopeful, some horrific. And in the center, a camcorder, still plugged in, still blinking red. They reviewed the footage for hours before letting us see. What I saw, I'll carry to my grave. 2 girls, one older, one maybe 7 or 8. Both pale, both thin, both trained to smile when spoken to. One frame caught Kessler's attention. The older girl lifts her hand, waves at the camera, then whispers, "Tell Jimmy I remember." My breath stopped. Jimmy. Kessler looked at me. I nodded. That's what she called me. It meant she'd been alive recently, or long enough to remember. But who was the other girl? Why hadn't we seen 2 children? Then came the real shock. Facial analysis confirmed it. The older girl in the video wasn't just a victim. She was the mother in the Henderson house. The woman I thought was her guardian, her rescuer, was her, all grown up. She had escaped. And then, for reasons no one could explain, gone back. Why would she return to the house? Kessler asked. Why risk it? And that's when we found the final page in the diary, tucked behind the cover, invisible unless you knew to pull the spine apart. Written in a rushed, slanted scrawl. She's still in there. I couldn't get her out. I made a promise. I never left. So it wasn't just guilt. It was loyalty to the other girl, her sister. They call it trauma bonding, Stockholm Syndrome. But names don't do it justice. Because sometimes, the strongest chains aren't metal. They're promises. The FBI reviewed public records, tried facial recognition on the younger girl. Nothing. No birth certificate. No school history. Just a ghost. Until one of the agents matched her drawing, found in the underground room. to a missing poster from 2013. A girl named Leah Crenshaw vanished from Arkansas at age 7. No leads, no suspects. Until now. Kessler turned to me, eyes hard. James, if the older girl, Mara, is trying to rescue her sister, she may be close. Closer than we think. She could still be hiding somewhere nearby, I said. Kessler nodded. Or, she's not hiding. She's watching. Waiting. We combed every motel in town. Every camera. Every forgotten back shed. Until we found a receipt. Dated 3 days ago. Signed, MK. And purchased. 1 flashlight. 1 lockpick set. And a crowbar. The clerk remembered her. Real quiet. Wore a hoodie. Looked young, but tired. Told me she was renovating a crawl space. At that point, the FBI wasn't looking for a victim anymore. They were hunting a rescuer. And maybe an accomplice. The final clue came not from technology, but instinct. I remembered something Mara wrote in her diary. Mr. Red only comes when the moon is broken. I thought it was poetic. Until I looked at the calendar. Every time the Polaroids were dropped, it was during the waning crescent. And tonight, waning crescent. We knew where she'd go. Where she'd have to go. Back to the house. Back to whatever secret chamber hadn't been found. By nightfall, we surrounded the property. Guns lowered. Flashlights off. Kessler turned to me. You stay back, James. I nodded. But I didn't listen. We breached at 11:07 p.m. The house groaned like it recognized her footsteps. There was no one in the upstairs rooms. No one in the basement. But in the attic. A hole in the floorboards. Freshly cut. Just wide enough for a body. They dropped a camera in. At first, it showed only dirt. Then, something shifted. A hand. Pale. Small. Fingers twitching. Alive. She was alive. Kessler shouted. Get the medics. We found the girl. But just then, a creak behind us. We turned. And standing in the doorway, eyes wild, face streaked with soot and rain, was Mara. She held a hammer in one hand. And in the other, a ring of old, rusted keys. I told her I'd come back, she whispered. And then from the darkness behind her, another voice. Male. Gravel thick. I told you she'd never leave, he said. A tall shadow stepped forward. Hair red as fire. Eyes cold as ash. Mr. Red. There was a stillness after she said it. I told her I'd come back. A silence so thick, it swallowed every creak of the old wood, every breath from our lungs. And then, he stepped forward. Mr. Red. Real name, Raymond Ellis. Same man who rented the basement from the Larkins over a decade ago. Same man whose name was buried in old permits and backlogged complaints that never got answered. He looked older now, leaner, but there was a calm to him, like he wasn't surprised he'd been found. No, it was worse than that. He was prepared. Flashlights caught the glint of something in his hands, a coil of wire. Tight, measured, controlled. Behind him, Mara's posture shifted. She wasn't afraid. She was waiting. Her voice cut the air again. You said you'd never hurt her. Raymond tilted his head. I didn't. Then. I hurt you. Agents moved in. Kessler raised her voice. Drop the wire, Ellis. Hands where we can see them. But it was Mara who moved first. She lunged. Not like a victim. Like someone who'd been rehearsing this for years. She tackled him at the knees, sending both of them crashing against the old stairwell. The hammer in her hand clattered against the wood. Gunfire didn't erupt. FBI didn't shoot. Because no one could. No one could predict what she'd do next. But she didn't try to kill him. She did something far worse. She took the ring of keys from his pocket and threw them into the dark. Down the attic hole. Into the room he'd built to keep her. The place he once controlled. They arrested him that night. Charged with multiple counts of abduction, unlawful imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit child trafficking. Because once the investigation dug deeper, the truth unraveled fast. Raymond Ellis hadn't worked alone. The family, who lived in the house recently, not a real couple. They were part of a network. One that spanned multiple states, using quiet properties, locked doors, and fake identities to disappear children in plain sight. Mara had been born into it. Not kidnapped. Groomed. Raised. Kept. Until she ran. And then came back. Not because she missed it, but because her sister never got out. The younger girl, Leah, survived. Malnourished. Traumatized. But alive. She'd been kept in a sealed crawl space, hidden behind insulation and old ductwork. They would have missed her if Mara hadn't led them to the exact plank. the same one she had once scratched into with fingernails and broken spoons. They carried Leah out wrapped in a foil blanket. Her eyes squinted against the moonlight. She hadn't seen stars in over 9 years. 6 months later, the trial began. Federal court. Media locked out, but the buzz outside was deafening. I sat in the back every day. I needed to. Not because I was a hero, but because I had seen her, day after day, crying behind the screen door, and I hadn't knocked. Mara took the stand. Not as a defendant, not exactly as a witness either. Somewhere in between. She answered every question with steady eyes. Never once said please or sorry. She didn't need to. One line broke everyone in the room. I kept waiting for someone to come. And then I realized, sometimes, the only rescue you get is the one you give. The prosecution called it one of the most complex human trafficking cases in state history. They traced the operation back to 3 families, 2 shell companies, and a set of encrypted ledgers hidden in the walls of the house. All of it operated under the name Covenant House Ministries. Sounded noble. It wasn't. Raymond Ellis acted as the warden. 2 others, the mother and the pastor, handled intake and training. They weren't training children for any noble purpose. They were preparing them to vanish. Raymond Ellis was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms without parole. He never showed remorse. Never spoke during the hearing. When asked if he wanted to make a statement, he only looked at Mara and smiled. It was cold, thin, like someone who'd lost a game but still believed he'd written the rules. The others, those who posed as her parents, those who helped, were each convicted, though none received as much time. Because it was Ellis who built the house, Ellis who made the keys. And Mara? She disappeared from public view after the trial. A court ruled that she would not face criminal charges. Why? Because no child raised in a cage can be blamed for unlocking someone else's. She took her sister, changed her name, moved west, I heard. Somewhere with trees, space, sky. Leah's now enrolled in a trauma recovery school. She doesn't speak much, but she draws. They say her latest sketch was of a daisy, growing through concrete. As for me, people keep asking if I'm okay, if I feel better, knowing it ended well, knowing they were saved. But the truth is, I don't. Because for every Mara and Leah, there are a dozen more. Doors we never knock on, windows we never look through, screen doors with tears on the other side, and 1,000 chances we missed to say something. Sometimes I still walk past the old house. The city condemned it. It'll be torn down in the spring. But last week, I went back one last time and taped something to the mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just one word. Safe. The moral lesson. Not every monster hides in the dark. Some build houses, wear uniforms, say prayers before dinner. And not every hero wears armor. Sometimes they just carry mail, or hide keys, or whisper a promise and come back years later to keep it. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it knocks.